Walk me through 2 specific deals from top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel that you specifically sourced in detail. How'd you do it from the beginning to the meeting to discovery? Like, how'd you know it was qualified all the way through to close? So that is like one of my ultimate keys.
You work with founders as they're starting to build their early sales teams. What's the interview process that you're typically recommending to founders?
So 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go with a 4-part interview process. So one's going to be, now the specifics with it are super important.
Think back to some of the best candidates you've ever interviewed. What did they do differently in the interview process that made them really stand out?
So the one thing I always look for is depth in their answer. Based on what they're actually saying, you can tell. And one of the things that I always ask is, if you had a chance to do it differently, what would you? And the great ones know it. I had an interview with an AE candidate, and it was a 2-part exercise. Write a prospecting sequence and then just walk us through it, and then do a mock discovery call. And guy shows up with, and I kid you not, like, if you are not coachable, you cannot come and work with my companies ever. It is always 9 for me.
All right, today I'm really excited to chat with Alex Newmann. He is one of the smartest people I know when it comes to transitioning teams from founder-led sales to making some of their first sales hires and starting to scale up. So the topic of sales hiring is very near and dear to his heart. He has been doing this for a decade plus, but beyond helping other companies, he's been a multi-time founder himself, had some exits. So I'm really excited to chat with you today, Alex.
Yeah, let's do it. That was so kind of you to say.
The other thing I forgot to mention, he's one of the best looking people in sales consulting in the startup world. So
right,
just
cool.
in case you're only listening to this, make sure you check out his profile picture as well.
I'm sure you have a great editing team, so thank you.
All right, let's jump into it. So what are the top 2 or 3 questions that you'd like to ask a sales rep in 2025 that give you some of the highest value in making a hiring decision?
So the place I actually start is a little bit different. So I think where I go to be able to get to the top questions are specifically around what are the attributes that I'm actually hiring for. And so, for example, like if I'm hiring for skill, and it's like a full cycle sales role, I might say, walk me through 2 specific deals from top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel that you specifically sourced in detail, walking me through like how'd you do it from the beginning to the meeting to discovery, like how'd you know it was qualified all the way through to close, and walk me through some of that, and feel free to insert any kind of hurdles or anything, but I'm really looking for the detail. And most specifically, I'm looking for what you did versus what you would do. So I want you to be able to talk about deals specifically, as opposed to like, hey, if I got started today, like this is what I would do there, and then go from there. So that is like one of my ultimate keys. Now the specifics with it are super important. So obviously I prep them, or I gave them direction. So I want to see how they're listening for it. The other thing is I'm specifically looking for the details, because a lot of times what sellers or sales candidates will do is they will just hear what they want to hear. And they'd be like, oh, so first I like send some emails, and then I set up a discovery call, and then I do the demo, and then I do the proposal. I'm like, well, what did I actually learn from that? Like, I read that blog too. Like, congratulations. Like, give me some of the good stuff. And so some people get it right on the head. Some people actually will take my feedback and then they'll go back into the story. And then some just like can't. They don't get it. And I think the more senior you are and the more that you can understand, the deeper you can ultimately get into the details, because the details have the good stuff. And then so I'm looking for you to really understand the ins and outs of your process. Other kinds of questions might be from like a coachability standpoint, might be like, what's the toughest criticism that you've ever received and what'd you do with it? And usually a lot of people are like, and then they'll say, well, I'm really hard on myself. I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? Like, I'm always coming back to you, and I'll even do this on interviews, to be like, as the interviewer and you're the interviewee, what do you want me to learn from that? Like, this isn't the first time that you've ever been in an interview. Granted, this is not like literally a brand new job, but like, I'm assuming that you've been in an interview before, you've read, you've researched, you ChatGPT, whatever it is, like coming in somehow prepared to be like, what do you expect me as the interviewer to be like, hey, I'm going to vouch for this guy? Another one might be about resourcefulness. So, hey, walk me through a time when you really didn't have a lot of information about something. You didn't know a ton about it, but you were able to make something happen. Tell me what it was, how you went about it, and ultimately if it was successful. And then whatever it is, no matter what, it doesn't matter actually what it is. Then I'll go, if you had a chance to do it differently, what would you do? So then I'm hitting like coachability and then resourcefulness at the exact same time with one question.
Yeah, I think that follow up too about what you do differently, which you also mentioned in that first question about their sales, some specific deals they've closed or whatever it might be. I think that shows a lot about their own ability to be autonomous and like autonomously learn and reflect. And one of the most important things I always look for is someone that can learn quickly and implement those learnings really quickly. So I think that's a really good point that you made there.
And I mean, a lot of it depends on the stage of the company that you're hiring for, right? So if you're hiring as like Salesforce, you don't have to have as much necessarily like critical thinking and being able to move forward with imperfect information because they have all this proven out stuff. But if you're going to work at or you're trying to apply to like a startup, there's not a lot of that stuff built. So you need to be able to prove that you can move forward with imperfect information and you're not just this like perfectionist that it's like you're never going to get it right the first time. You're probably not even going to get it right the 100th time, but it's about how can you move forward and then still learn.
So when you're talking through some of these questions that you like to ask, you mentioned specifically adapting to what the interviewer, not just like what the person's asking, but like what you think they want to hear. So there's almost a test within the question itself. I've myself have also asked, hey, what do you do differently than other sales reps that's helped you stand out? But do you feel stuff like that might be too on the nose and you want people that are able to recognize they should say some of that stuff naturally?
I think it goes both ways. I'm not against a question like that. I think a lot of it actually, so I'm not so much looking for what is the answer, but oftentimes I'm actually looking for how they answer it themselves. And you can go a lot based on is it like just a closed ended, oh, I work harder than everybody else. That's like a bullshit thing versus like, what's really interesting is one of the things that I think that I do differently, and I'm putting it on myself, so I don't actually know because there's a billion sales reps in the world. But one of the things that I think that I do really, really, really differently is I study my clients at a level that is differently than I think the average person does. And the only reason I can compare that is based on the way I see my colleagues work and I listen to all of their calls and then I do blah, 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 blah. But the whole point is what did I just give you? I gave you detail. I gave you the fact that I listened to my colleagues' calls. I gave you all this additional information. So like how you answer it is so important versus just I work really hard or I listen to calls. Like give me something more. This should be you selling me. If you can't sell me you, then you can't sell whatever the hell I'm going to sell or ask you to sell. So I look at it and go, you got to make it over the top and then you got to make it conversational. Like I think of it almost like a movie trailer. You want me to want to watch the rest of the movie. And
I
if I
love that.
don't, you got nothing.
I love the movie trailer analogy. All right, so you work with founders as they're starting to build their early sales teams. So what's the interview process? Whether it's for say, let's just say it's their first AE or one of their first AEs. What's the interview process that you're typically recommending to founders?
So 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go with a 4-part interview process. So one's going to be founder one interviews. Typically, I interview. Then we do an interview like exercise or assignment, and then like the CEO founder would do the final one. So it'd be like a 4-part.
And that exercise, what is that typically?
It is testing them on whatever is the thing that I want them to do. So if it's like just SDR work, it'll be focusing on like prospecting, how you think through your prospecting strategy, as well as like show me a specific cadence. And I might even be like, write the emails themselves, write the cold call, or at least like the opener. What does it DM work? If it is a AE or if the SDR is supposed to do the discovery call itself, like walk me through and I'll actually do like a mock discovery call with somebody else on the team and I will have them do it live. So the whole point is to be able to show me the skill that I want you to be able to do more than anything else. I'm not going to ask you to like write a marketing strategy and you're an AE. Like that doesn't make any sense. But I want to test you on the thing that I want you to do as well as you possibly can. And I'm going to see how you do it. And then I ask you to critique yourself. Then I give you feedback. The other people in the room give you feedback. And I want to see how you respond and how coachable. Do you get super defensive? Do you go, hey, that's really helpful? That type of thing.
Yeah, I like that part a lot. We incorporate it as well. Giving them the feedback and seeing how they react, I think is really important. Because I had a candidate earlier this year that I thought was great, and I gave them the feedback, and they got super defensive about it, and it was an immediate red flag for me.
I had an interview with an AE candidate, and it was a 2-part exercise. Write a prospecting sequence, and then just walk us through it, and then do a mock discovery call. And guy shows up with, and I kid you not, literally copy and pasted ChatGPT into a Google Doc, and that's what he showed me. M dashes, emojis, and all, and I'm like, get out. I was like, this is embarrassing.
Yeah, what are like, man, that's. No good. I recently had someone, they were doing a screen share for us, and when they went to go share their screen, they shared their ChatGPT
Uh,
chatbot open, reading through everything they were saying, and they
uh,
didn't realize that they were sharing at the same time.
Yeah, but that's
Uh,
the whole thing is like you put them in a situation to be able to show how they actually would do the job in real life. Same thing with a discovery call, like do a mock discovery call and they ask two questions. Do they do BANT? Do they do just like an interrogation? Do they try to switch to a demo like three questions in? Like the proof is in the pudding. Like let them and I always say like sell whatever you want. Like the one thing that I always say is you cannot sell whatever is you're applying for because I know that better than you know that, and everybody who's like the founders and everybody who's interviewing is going to critique that candidate on their own company and be like, oh, he got that wrong, she did this wrong, he did that wrong, and that doesn't fly. So I'm always like, sell whatever you sell or pick something that you know a ton about. Like if it's baseball hats, like sell me on why I should buy a baseball hat.
so you feel pretty strongly about that, and funny because I myself feel the other way, and I know some other people feel the other way that they should be pitching the company to see how well they can start to learn some of the product and the
Yeah.
application. But take me a little bit deeper. Why do you think it's so important, or why do you think it's a bad read when someone tries to do a mock pitch or mock discovery call with that
Yeah.
company's product?
So the thing is, I used to do that. And what I found a couple things. One is the founder and all the other interviewers end up stop listening to the actual like what they're doing in the discovery call and they're simply analyzing. They're like, oh, he got that wrong, or she said this wrong, or they don't know anything about our product or whatever it is. And they know their product so much better than the candidate that the person is literally like, of course I don't know, I have never learned this, like you've never trained me on this before. And so the scorecard of that is essentially biased in the wrong direction, and no matter how much I prep everybody else, it doesn't, I can't seem to ever get past it. The other thing is I want the seller should have a lot of excitement, confidence, knowledge about the thing that they're selling. So if I were to just research all about some random company that I'm applying for, I'm only getting what you put on the website. And especially because I work with a lot of startups, a lot of people's websites suck. And so you're kind of getting this like half baked information. So if you're going to be like, sell me Salesforce, you can get a ton about Salesforce or HubSpot or SalesLoft or whatever it is. Like you can get a bunch of information about that. And if you're confident and you're knowledgeable about it and you used it before and you can see what the pains are, then I think it comes out differently in the delivery. So I get your point, but that's my personal experience. And it really does affect the way that the ultimate outcome happens.
Yeah. I want to go back to the process for a second. You are having founders, right? They're doing their independent interviews as they should. What are you coaching them on the things that they should be digging into since you're also involved in the process?
I do a couple things. So one is I'll develop the JD, and then I'll develop the ideal sales candidate profile, and then we'll develop the actual hiring scorecard and what are the attributes on the hiring scorecard that you want to test. And then we get into what are the questions that you're going to ask to test those specific attributes. And then we go into what are BS answers and good answers so that you know what it is that you're looking for in order to be able to just say, oh, it sounded like a really good answer, and they didn't say anything. And that's where I think most people struggle, and how I can get through the noise is I know what they are trying to say, but there's not enough depth in the answers. And so I'll call an applicant on their BS, or a founder might say, sounds good to me. And so I want to coach them on what is a BS answer or like a really good answer and how to go more in depth on that. And then one of the things they'll do is I record my interviews. I obviously ask the applicant if that's possible. And it's just for training purposes where I'll just review it with the actual founder and go, hey, watch what you do, then watch what I do and see the difference in the interviews. And then there's all these like light bulbs that go off.
I also very much subscribe to that linear progression in developing what the JD and the question should be. I think more people need to think about it that way and literally just put stuff in a table,
Yeah.
which is right. Here are the qualities that we need to test for. Here's how we test it. Here are the questions we're going to ask, and here's what a good answer, a good response looks like, or bad in
Yeah,
that
and I
case.
think the scorecard is really important. So one of the other things that I do that's a tiny piece is I actually weight the attributes based on what I think. And I only use 369 because a lot of times what you'll get is they're all important or they're all equally weighted, but they're not equally weighted. Like if you are not coachable, you cannot come and work with my companies ever. Like, it is always 9 for me. But executive presence, well, if it is an enterprise level company, maybe it's super important. But if it's not, and you're talking to like SMBs, their executive is not to the same depth as if you're trying to sell to like public companies. So it has to change based on the weights, because not all attributes are created equal or
I like
weighted.
that. I like that 369 framework. I haven't heard of that one before.
Well, otherwise everything's like, well, what's the difference between an 8 and a 9? And you're like, this is the same, right? And it's just like, and that's what you kind of have to remove a little bit of the bias.
I like that. Think back to some of the best candidates you've ever interviewed. What did they do differently in the interview process that made them really stand out?
So the one thing I always look for is depth in their answer. Like, based on what they're actually saying, you can tell if they are literally thinking about a specific deal that they're referencing. And one of the things that I always ask is, if you had a chance to do it differently, what would you? And the great ones know it. And the bad ones go, I would qualify better. And it's like, come on. And so I really look for the depth and the specificity in the answer itself. Now, granted, if I'm looking for like entry level SDRs, I'm hiring in a different kind of way, right? There's a lot of differences here. I'm always looking for, what are the questions that you ask me? Like, one of the things that bugs me all the time is like, walk me through what is like a typical day in the life of somebody who works there. And I go, it's a full cycle selling position. What the hell do you think is the actual typical life, day in the life? I'm like, Google any sales job in the world and you're going to get an answer for that. Or, can you tell me what a 30, 60, 90 is? And I'm like, every 30, 60, 90 is exactly the same freaking thing. So it's like, help me understand, like, get to the like deeper questions is really going to be a piece there. I would say if it's about the specific interviewer itself. So I'm not necessarily saying, hey, when you talk to Alex, obviously I'm fairly easy to like do research on, but I want to see like, how do you weave what me being involved in has to do with the company? So granted, I'm a little biased, but I look at it and go, if a company is hiring me, a sales coach, into the company, that's one hell of a signal into an investment into you as the salesperson. What have they done in the past? Why didn't it work? Why all of a sudden are we in this situation? Now all of a sudden you're showing me you know how to do discovery outside of just asking questions that you got off of the Google search results page.
Yeah, yeah. I think the depth truly matters, right, in their answers, and a lot of like the theme from what you've been saying is how people approach things much more than the actual answer itself. It goes to the depth and the detail that they have. If you think back to, do you have any memorable stories about someone that's really gone above and beyond an interview process that really has kind of stuck with you?
Good or bad?
I would actually like one of each if you have it.
One of each. So I had an interview with a guy recently, and on paper looked great. First couple of minutes in the interview looked really, really polished, really well articulate, had his stories. One of the things that I tend to look for is going to be, hey, give me a third example or give me a fourth example. Because most people are preparing one or two examples because they have their like best deal that they ever sent or second deal that they, but people aren't used to getting to the third and fourth. People who know their stuff inside and out, we could talk about 400 deals that we've done. I could tell you details about deals that I sold 20 years ago and how painful it was when I either did it or I didn't do it. And that's the type of thing that I'm really looking for. And so when I started asking the question, the guy kind of had his like script that he was prepared. And all of a sudden, when I asked him, I said, hey, can you give me another example? And he was like, well, what do you mean? I gave you the two that I was looking for because I said, hey, can you give me two examples? And he was prepared. And you could tell he was confident. And as soon as I said, you know what? And I do it on purpose. You know what? How about this? Can you give me a third one, actually? And the whole interview completely just like unraveled after that. And he was worried. He was frustrated. He didn't have his ducks in a row. And it kind of showed me, and this was for a startup, is from an adaptability standpoint, he was very buttoned up from a structure perspective. But it's like the whole Mike Tyson quote. I punched him in the face, and all of a sudden he just like folded and he didn't know how to respond. So that was a tough one. On the other side of it, like, I can think of one of my all-time favorite applicants. She's actually worked for 3 different companies that I have worked with. She initially worked for a company called Vision, which is like one of those like SDR, teach them how to sell kind of things. And the research that she did on me was beyond, like, it wasn't like, if you go to my LinkedIn, it says I like skiing and Krav Maga. Like, it's not exactly rocket science, but she was able to create humor. She was able to create a conversation. She was able to, even at a very junior level, she was pretty much straight out of school. She started this like Vendition thing, SDR, and she was talking to me at the same level that I was. She'd clearly done her research. She'd practiced talk tracks. And then afterwards, we even asked, I was like, hey, what'd you do? And she's like, I practiced with a bunch of other people because I read all your content on LinkedIn and I knew that you were going to be a challenging person and you were going to look for examples. And you see, all the stuff that I write about is tell me specifics, tell me specifics, tell me specifics. And I've been doing this for so long, like I'm not a hard person to research around how I'm going to interview you. And so she came in just like not only prepared, but it had it to the point of like the actual implementation and execution. She had good examples. And then my favorite is I would be like, hey, how do you think about this? And she was very honest and she goes, you know what? I've never really thought about it. But how about this? How about I tell you how I think I would handle it? Because I've actually not been in that situation. So there was just this breath of transparency and honesty of like, I felt like I really knew who she was.
Yeah. I think people worry sometimes about doing like too much research or like feeling like they're being, I don't know, stalkers in some ways. But almost every single time it comes off as impressive and that they care about the small details.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, listen, Alex, this was great. Thank you so much for your time. There's some pretty critical lessons here for founders that are trying to get out of founder led sales and making those first sales hires.
Hey, thanks for having me on.